And I was privileged to listen to Stephen, what he's done in Washington, that out of just a simple little idea, out of innovation, out of the engagement of people, out of understanding, and just people wanting to make a difference and a change, that something happened. And I think we've yet to get there in Australia. That by thinking innovatively, we could start to address poverty in our Aboriginal communities and society as a whole. And how would you go about that? Well, firstly, move from a deficit model or thinking of Aboriginal people as a liability and think of their strengths. And how many champions, Aboriginal champions you have in this state of yours, in Victoria, in Walker and Mark Stone, that to be able to harness their knowledge and leadership to create change. But also balance that leadership off with your own leadership and the challenge to yourselves to think outside the square and challenge your colleagues across departments. And then once you harness that leadership and you get full engagement and a realisation there's an equitable process going on, then you move towards what is it that Aboriginal people can add value to this work of yours, to this fine state of Victoria. And you start to pick off some very good examples that are elsewhere in this country. I'm only on the periphery of the whole NAILSMA, Northern Australian Indigenous Land Sea Management Alliance in Northern Australia, but I often wonder why their fire management burning systems are not copied across this country. To be able to manage fires as Aboriginal people have done for thousands of years, that you could mitigate against tragedies like the fires in Victoria and South Australia and Perth. Simple things. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There's already good ideas happening elsewhere in the country. Biosecurity and management of biodiversity of these wonderful parks in Victoria. And ownership of the parks. Not just Aboriginal people sitting on some advisory board, but actual ownership and lease back to the state, to give them, make them feel proud and strong that they have a sense of place and purpose in this community. Why is it that Aboriginal people can't assist you to walk your way through into not only thinking it from a Aaron Bernstein point of view through a microscope, but there is an embedded traditional knowledge sitting in Aboriginal society. Medicines that will clear, you sniff some of the wattles. Once you boil them up in Northern Australia, you can clear the phlegm clean out of your throat and lungs. There's anaesthetics that can, with a cobbler bites and stingray bites, will stop that poison straight away in your hand and finger, even if the barbs have gone straight through your feet or your chest. Why is it that there is not a credible processes in places like Victoria to try and source and work with Aboriginal people to look for alternative medicines? And so there's not much more I can say, and I'll make it short, but I just think to myself, Damien Bell, Joe Ross, many others that you might think has a big mouth and stands 6'2", I think Damien stands, and I stand 6'4", but people like us are a dime a dozen, really. The only thing that made us get to where we are is because people actually saw some value in us. Someone said, you're going to school, you've got something to add to this society, we're going to support you and mentor you, we're going to help you, and then you're on your own to come back and contribute. which brings a... that might have sounded so easy. I was thinking of my father. My father was a Englishman who came out from Liverpool in 1938 as an orphan. And I could always hear this ringing in my ear when he shipped me on the aeroplane to go to Darwin for boarding school, primary and secondary school. My son will never be bloody educated by the Protestants. He's going to be a good little Catholic child. And unfortunate for me in the Fitzroy Valley, there was only Christian people, Uniting Church, and there was no Catholics. So I had to go get shipped off to Kununurra and Darwin. And as I grew up, I started to challenge him, and I said, hey, hang on a minute, you shipped me up to Darwin to go to school all because of this issue with Protestants. And I remember now, all those years, some of your best mates, and still are Protestants. Mr. Smoger, the preacher, and Mr. Faulkner, and all those characters. What's the difference? He said, I don't know, but, the Christian brothers and the old Bernardo nuns, they were good to me. And I was sort of thinking to myself, well, that same Bernardo nun, old bloke, shipped you off to Australia all because she told you was going on a holiday. And, but to be able to get educated and then to move to the next space of taking on a trade, but also to come back and contribute to society, is all because someone valued. And I think that's one of the key elements Parks Victoria and others can contribute, for starters, is the embracement of local champions. And wherever you go in Walker and Crew, maybe one day you can come up to my country, pay myself or many of my family big dollars. We've got FTOSs now in our offices. Bring your gold card up like Martha. And if you've got a wife or a husband that doesn't want to get out, that's all right, as long as they're paying customers. Thank you.